Morning world, welcome to 1st of March 2023, Wednesday, and another trip to Oxford. Okay, so it's the end of the day, which may seem like a daft time to be doing an intro into a video, but I'll let you know what we're doing. I've just been up to visit Mrs. P in Oxford, and while we were up here, we went for a tour around Oxford Castle and the dungeons and prisons and stuff like that, which was really interesting. We were led round by a very enthusiastic and knowledgeable young lady called Emily, who was excellent, by the way. You want some feedback, and that's what the feedback is. You were great. So this is a tour, for those of you that might be interested, of Oxford Castle, the old prisons and dungeons, bit of history of the city, town, village, and some of the really unpleasant things that have gone on there over the last 1,000 years or so. Anyhow, roll the video.
Bailey, that's that area here. Sometimes we had a double Bailey castle, which meant you had the inner Bailey for the nobs and the outer Bailey for the peasants. This castle was purely built for military reasons. It protected the crossing of the river Oxon Border. Yeah, got it? As it was called then. Oxford at that time, when the Normans arrived, was just a shadow of anything really. It was falling into disrepair, the whole city. There may have been plague, there may have been a fire, but it was a heck of a mess. And I'm just wondering who that might be.
Welcome everybody to Oxford Castle Prison. My name is Emily.
Mind the step.
It's almost like I do this as a job. I should probably tell which ones are short and which ones are taller at this point.
We go in that way?
This is our lovely room we can head into.
Right.
It's very cosy and cold and empty. Those words don't really work together. You look above your heads, you'll see those very useless Victorian tanks. Still though, amazing that those have lasted over 200 years. Those Victorians really knew what they were doing. We're actually going to talk about this room. You see, this room and this tower, and indeed this city, were at one point the centre of a war. The war between the parliamentarians and the royalists. And between the years of 1642 and 1649, King Charles I, leader of the royalists, actually made Oxford his capital, trying to rid himself of those pesky parliamentarians. When he came here though, he didn't want to stay in the cold, dusty castle. So he made his home at Christ Church with his allegiancy, much more cosy and modern there. And this tower became his prisoner of war camp. 60 parliamentarian soldiers in this room. There was no room to lay on the floor. In fact, you would sleep leaning up against the wall with the next man lying on you so you didn't slump to the ground. And if you did die, your body wouldn't be removed for burial. No, it would be left in here, shoved into the corner until the next cleaning day, every few months. So it's really no wonder that when General Thomas Fairfax, right-hand man to the one and only Oliver Cromwell, when he finally stormed Oxford, when he took control and discovered what was going on here, he actually ordered his men to destroy most of the site that was standing, in hopes of preventing the royalists from using it in the same way ever again. We actually only have 3 points left from our Norman and Anglo-Saxon heritage. We have our Anglo-Saxon tower. This remains because of the water wheel at the bottom. At the time, it produced grain for the entire town, so it was useful. They didn't want to just destroy it. We also have the mound outside, that giant hill. You probably saw it on your way in today. Now that mound is all we have left of the old Norman castle. Now, they couldn't figure out how to destroy the giant pile of dirt, which is fair enough, but they did destroy the castle surrounding it. And then we have our crypt, which was left buried under rubble from the chapel above it that was destroyed, and it was completely forgotten about for over 100 years. We'll go to that a bit later. But first, we'll continue our ascent up St. George's Tower. When we get to the very top, you can all enjoy the gorgeous view. And I'll tell you a bit more about that mound we have outside. Is everyone ready to climb?
Oh yeah.
You guys seem so excited about the stairs. Follow me this way, mates. Watch the tower and enjoy the view. While you're up here, and as we go around this tour today, you're able to take as many photos as you like. And if you guys do have any questions at any point, please do ask. I love to natter on. But for now, I'll tell you a bit more about this mound we have outside. You see that mound, that hill there, is actually man-made. The mound was built by 200 Saxon slaves under the law of Robert Doyley. They would have dug a large circular ditch and piled all that earth into the centre to create the mound, or motte in French. And in that ditch they would have then let a small stream from the river out back, conjoined them, and then created a lovely moat to keep all trespassers out. And on top of the mound they built a 10-sided Norman keep, originally in wood in 1071, but later in 1074 it was rebuilt in stone. This is more longevity, because stone is far less susceptible to fire. And you can imagine how terrifying that must have been for the local Anglo-Saxons. You see a giant Norman tower erected in the centre of their town shortly after they were conquered, rivaling their own defensive tower in height. But that was kind of the idea with the Normans. They wanted you to be so afraid that you never even thought about fighting back. To be fair to them though, surrounding that structure was something known as a bailey, making up the second half of the Motte and Bailey Castle, and also being a self-sustaining defensive village within the town of Oxford. And in reality, in the event of an attack, the entire town could retreat into the Bailey and stay safe and survive for up to 3 months. So, at least the Anglo-Saxons benefited in some way from the thing that they were forced to build. To be fair to the Anglo-Saxons though, this tower has been standing for over 1,000 years, and the only real points of deterioration are these windows you can see around. But we are lucky enough to have a reconstructed version of one of these windows over here. That is what it would have looked like in 1009. Now, I know that looks religious because of the cross symbol, but actually it's not. This tower is the oldest non-religious building in all of Oxford, and that is completely tactical. You can shoot a longbow through that vertical point there, and a crossbow through the horizontal point. And because it's so narrow, no one can shoot in at you! Unless they're a very good shot. But don't shoot any arrows at me, okay? I don't like being impaled. Now, I'll give you guys a few more moments to take photos, enjoy the sights, and shortly we'll head back down the tower.
Yeah?
Yeah, you smell?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Earthy, stony smell, yeah.
Well, kind of isolates you from the rest of the site. Some other people hate it and they want to escape, but that's not me, so. Welcome everybody to the Norman Crypt. We are actually lucky enough to have 4 original Norman pillars down here. These 4 on this side of the room are the originals. They were built and hand-carved in 1074, over 900 years ago, and this is one of the only places in England you can actually come up and touch hand carvings like these. So I implore you to. You can see that the corners here were designed to resemble palm leaves, as this was a Catholic chapel. And especially on this pillar here, the teeniest, tiniest details have somehow managed to survive after years of war and then being buried under rubble for over 100 years. And if you look further down, even the staining from the paints that would have adorned them has survived. This entire room would have been ablazoned in reds and golds. Even the ceiling was said to have been painted like a starry night sky. It would have been beautiful down here. And it's quite nice that they decided to decorate, because upstairs in St. George's Chapel was a place of worship and education. But down here in the crypt, this was just a storage room. That's all it was. St. George's Crypt was a storage room for the dead. It was basically a medieval morgue. This is where the monks used to keep dead bodies, oftentimes of plague victims. They would then prepare them and bury them in the churchyards outside. That does mean, though, ladies and gents, that to this day, we are surrounded by graves. We are surrounded by the dead. And that's why they say that this is the most haunted place in all of Oxford. More specifically, this corner just over here is said to have a lot of paranormal activity. Now, I am always curious as to who gravitates towards the corner first. Today with you guys. I'm not sure what that means, but hey-ho. To be fair, we have had many different experiences recorded in this corner. People say that if you stand here for too long, you'll start to feel a presence leaning over your shoulder, but perhaps a monk, perhaps something darker. You may feel a breath against your neck, maybe a touch against the skin. The smell of mead seeping from these old walls. If you take a photo of this corner, it's said to come out all distorted and blurry. Do let me know if you have any experiences. It's great material for the tour. Okay, I will admit, down here, bit doom and gloom with all the dead bodies. Okay, I'll admit it. But upstairs in the chapel, it was very lively indeed. A place of worship, yes, but also a place of education. Actually, the first place of higher education in all of Oxford. Predating Oxford University by 100 years. So, without our chapel, the university might not even be here today. We like to say that they might owe us a little something, just a little bit, still. And this place was left buried under rubble until 1795, when our prison governor, Daniel Harris, was putting his inmates to work to build the prison wing above our heads. Now, they were digging the foundations when they discovered these 4 pillars here, and Daniel Harris was very excited. He considered himself an amateur archaeologist, and so he put his inmates to work to unearth, rebuild, and expand the crypt. If you look at these 2 pillars here, these look a lot older, a lot more decrepit than the other pillars. But they're actually newer. These were built in 1795 by the inmates, and they didn't quite get those lovely Norman carvings that we see on the others. But considering the fact these inmates were unskilled, they weren't stonemasons in any way, and all they were told was to copy that, I think they did a really good job. They also built the roof above our heads using old stones from the county jail, and they laid the floor beneath our feet using recycled cobblestones from the city of Oxford. So, all in all, quite an environmentally friendly build, especially for the time. That Daniel Harris, he was a trendsetter. He actually brought the prison reformation system to Oxford, which included the belief that putting inmates to work would teach them skills. They could then use those once they left prison, hopefully meaning they would make a life of themselves and then they would never return to prison ever again. And this did work. We still use this system in our prisons today. Now, we're going to head upstairs, we're going to take a look at some cells, and I'll tell you guys about some inmates that were here before your times. But if you consider yourself ghost hunters, perhaps you'd just like to come back and enjoy the solace of the crypt, you're very welcome to. In fact, from the crypt onwards throughout the entire prison, you can come back and explore of your own volition. The only place you cannot return to is St. George's Tower, just for safety reasons. But if you'd like to come back down here later, you're free to do so. If you dare. Ooh. But now, though, inmates, follow me right this way.
Terrified. Terrified.
Thank you very much indeed.
Cell, hopefully a little one's life. To be fair, this is actually 2 cells. You can tell by the 2 doors and the division down the middle. Depending on what era you were born into, you could be 1 person to a cell, or you could be 5 people to a cell. It was really luck of the draw. Today, though, our story takes us to 1577. and it follows a man by the name of Roland Jenks. Now, Roland Jenks was a Catholic author and bookseller here in Oxford, and one day he decided to publish a pamphlet directly criticising our good Protestant Queen, Elizabeth I. Now, during this time, Catholics and Protestants really did not get on, and that's an understatement. And insulting the Queen as well, he was arrested. He was sentenced to be pilloried by the ears. Now, if any of you would like to come back later on, put each other into the pillory, you're very, very welcome to, with consent, It's rather easy, actually. I should demonstrate. You put your wrists through either side and your head through the middle until your throat rests against the wood. Quite comfy, actually. But Roland wasn't just pilloried, sadly, no. He was pilloried by the ears, which would involve your guard taking a large nail, placing it against the cartilage, not the lobe, the cartilage of the ear, and hammering it in to either side. This would pin your face up. You couldn't turn away from your shame, you couldn't turn away from your crime, the crowd, or the things people wanted to throw at you. This could be rotting vegetables, it could be mud, it could be feces, it could even be dead animals. Now don't worry, she doesn't bite anymore, she's dead. But actually, if you guys want to throw dead rats at each other later, you're very welcome to. But I can't stress this enough. Only use the fake dead rats, please. Thank you. Now to be fair, I'm very lucky, because I get to just escape. Roland wasn't. He was made to stay in the pillory for 3 days and 3 nights. And if any of you try this out later on, you'll know how comfortable that is. And actually, the most interesting part of his story isn't his punishment, it's his trial. You see, when he found out what was going to happen to him, he put a curse on the entire courthouse. Now, this would be an empty threat if it wasn't for the next day. The judge, the jury, and the High Sheriff of Oxford all started to fall ill and die. 600 men fell ill, and 300 men died during what we now know as the Black Assizes of Oxford. And historians will tell you this is just jail fever. It's just typhus, a very common disease in prisons. You see, Roland, he was lower class, so he'd already built an immunity to the disease by the time he came into prison. So he contracted it, but he didn't die. When he went to the courthouse, however, where the rich and fine men of the gentry had not yet built an immunity to the sickness, they then contracted it and perished. This, however, doesn't explain how when those men went home to their wives and their children, neither of whom were allowed in courthouses, nor were they involved in the judicial system, how none of those people fell ill. In fact, only the wealthy men responsible for Roland's punishment fell ill and died. So, jail fever or curse? I'll let you guys be the judge. Roland did have a happy ending though, albeit slightly gruesome. At the end of those 3 days and 3 nights in the pillory, one of his wrists was released, and he was handed a blade. And he was forced to cut off his own ears to escape. This would scar him for life as a criminal. This was known as branding, a very common aspect of punishments for the time. After that, though, he escaped England, probably to avoid a witch trial. And he went to Belgium, where he became a baker. Because you do not need your ears to bake. Oh, happy ending! Thank goodness. Our next story, though, is 200 years in the future. It follows a very different kind of inmate we kept here, and it's a love story. Oh. Actually, I've made a mistake. Yes, I have. You guys are all far too rich to be in this cell. It's a horrible cell, there's rats in here and everything. I have a much nicer cell at the hall, much more suited to your wealth. I'm so sorry, inmates. I didn't realise you were so rich. You should have told me. Goodness, follow me this way. I'm so sorry about that. You follow me this way. Much nicer cell at this way. Now that cell, that's where the poor people stay. We're not going to go in there, but you can come back later and, I don't know, laugh at them.
Nice pallet bed.
Yeah, it's nice, it's comfy, isn't it? Now this is clearly much more suitable for you, so head straight in, make yourself comfortable. I'm so sorry about the mix-up, ladies and gents. Apologies. I'm so sorry about that mix-up, and I'm so glad you guys are all so rich. Because I was really starting to like all of you. And in the 1700s, you have to pay for prison. It's like a hotel, but you're here against your will. You have to pay for your cell, the room you stay in, the bed you sleep in, the food you eat. Anything you receive from the prison has a price. So, if you're poor, good luck. But if you're wealthy, as we are, you can have anything your heart desires. One such prisoner was Mary Blandy. She was a very wealthy woman. Her father was a lawyer in Henley-upon-Thames. But in 1751, she had a problem. She was nearly 30 and unmarried. Ooh. Okay, fair enough. Today, it does not matter when, where, how, or even if you get married. But in the 1700s, if you were a woman and you weren't married by 30, you'd be known as a spinster. And this would bring shame on your entire family. So, but for now though, welcome to Debtor's Tower. This is where you would come if you owed money. Sometimes to the Crown, but honestly, most of the time to the prison. In the 1700s, if you couldn't afford to pay for your cell in the main prison, after your sentence, you'd be brought straight to debtors to start working off your debt. You would either work for the prison or you'd go to an external workhouse, where upon your return, all of your money would be taken. And this was a vicious cycle because whilst you were in debtors, trying to work off your debt, you still had to pay for everything you received in debtors, including your cell. If you look above your head, you'll see those lovely triangle shapes on the ceiling, and that is where a single cell would sit. And that's not an awful lot of space, especially when you consider the fact that we had a man who stayed here for 30 years, just trying to pay off his debt. Now, not only is that over half your lifetime in the 1700s, it's longer than some murderers that we've kept incarcerated here. So completely unfair and directly affects those of lower income more than anybody. And actually, despite the fact that you guys are all really rich, that's what I've realised you're all in prison for. You all owe me money! Which is great for me, terrible for you guys, but don't worry, I'm very nice. So I will let you explore, and might even let you escape, as this is in fact the end of your tour. Now I really hope you do enjoy exploring our exhibition. You can follow this timeline all the way around and continue it through this doorway here, and if you keep going, you'll find some hard labour to try out, if the stairs weren't enough for you. And if you keep going, you'll find our padded cell as well, which was specifically built and held one of our most dangerous and notorious prisoners, the serial killer, the Black Panther. So have fun with that. Thank you so much though for coming on my tour today. I really hope you did enjoy it. If you did, if you could leave a review, including my name and Robin's name as well, that would be absolutely amazing. My name is Emily. And if you guys didn't enjoy the tour, I'm a drunk student that broke in. I thought I could do a tour, but clearly I couldn't. Regardless, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day in Oxford. If any of you are staying in the city tonight, please have a safe evening in the city. And if any of you are travelling today, safe travels to you as well. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone.
Let's pretend.
The light lights up in this bit, right?
Yeah.
And you go in and it goes dark. And this lady went in and she stood there and he appeared in front of her. She shut up.
Did you? It's a miracle.
No, it wasn't. Okay, now you can. Oh no, he's going back again.
Yeah.
Apart from being soundproof, she's as smooth as silk. No sharp corners, no lumps and bumps on which to tarnish my good looks. Behind here is a tiny band of steel patch.
Doesn't look very comfy. John Moore. Oh,
Spygate, you watched that?
eh?
They apparently filmed here like Spygate.
Oh, I expect they've had a few films shot here, aren't they?
How did it come up here when it was raining?
Yeah, it wouldn't be much fun if it was raining.
No. Is that the tower you've just been at there?
So the model downstairs, if you look at the scale of that and the size of the top of here, it's not very big, is it? That was a defensive...
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello. Ah, water. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, at the bottom, that makes perfect sense.
That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, well, you've got a pretty good view from up here, haven't you? Well, it would have been built defensively. None of this would have been here. It is, isn't it? That is actually quite steep down there. Nice feature up light in the tree. We can get away with that now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's light pollution, can't have that. Heaven forbid you make something look nice.
Yeah, I'm not going down that bit.
I wouldn't mind it. I'd be intrigued to go and have a look in there. No. So that's the tower we were up the other day, isn't it? Over there. The tower we were up over there.
Yeah.
Oh, my arse. It's only an hour and a half drive from there and back, and from here to there, but I don't know. It seems to get longer every time.